Donald Trump, as I'm sure you've heard, has once again been federally indicted. This makes it 3 indictments total, this time again out of a Jack Smith-led investigation, but into Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election results, allegedly, according to this indictment, unlawfully. And we'll walk through quickly the details on the indictment itself, just kind of skimming through this information. Then in this segment, get to Trump's response, which is truly unhinged. We'll look at that in just a moment. But first, here's the news from the Washington Post. Former President Donald Trump has been indicted in Special Counsel Jack Smith's investigation into efforts to overturn the 2020 election results and the events leading up to the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol, and he's expected to appear in court on Thursday. The indictment, returned Tuesday by a grand jury in U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C., alleges that Trump perpetrated 3 criminal conspiracies, quote, built on the widespread mistrust the defendant was creating through pervasive and destabilizing lies about election fraud. And his lies there are referenced about the 2020 election. And so you'll notice, and we'll talk about this later in today's show, many times people within right-wing media, right-wing figures, using the talking point of Trump's being indicted for things that are protected by his First Amendment right, his freedom of speech right, and he's being indicted for just having questions about the election. That's so far from the truth. While indeed in the unsealed indictment that I'll pull up on screen here, obviously we won't go through it, but you can do that yourself, and it very effectively walks through, as I was reading through it this morning, the details that are supporting each of these felony counts, these accusations against Trump, and we'll talk about what those felony counts are in a moment. But in the indictment, indeed, it does discuss the lies that Trump was telling, not because he's being indicted for lying or for questioning the election results, but because he was using those lies to justify actions, and he was using those lies to try to pressure election officials and justify all of these different alleged unlawful actions to install himself president despite losing the election and prevent the peaceful transition of power, prevent the federal government from doing what it's supposed to do and moving forward and operating. And that brings us to this, the front page of the unsealed indictment, the 4 felony counts being conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, conspiracy against rights. And I do encourage you, at least skim, at least go through if you're curious about how each of these different felony counts comes into play and what evidence is being spoken about here. And it, like I said, does a really good job of outlining that in this 45-page indictment. But absolutely, I think this is a very, very strong case against Donald Trump, like the previous one that Jack Smith brought. And essentially, in whole, we can't go through every detail, we just don't have time, but in kind of a zoomed out sense, he is being legally held accountable for being a part of conspiring with his inner circle to try to prevent, for example, the lawful certification of Biden's win, preventing an official proceeding of the United States government, to prevent the peaceful transition of power. One of the things discussed in the indictment is that fake elector scheme, fraudulently pretending and fraudulently having these forms that claim these are the real electors, and we're going to have VP at the time, Mike Pence, say these are the actual electors. And so, again, completely fraudulently, not at all aligned with the facts or the actual process. So actually Trump won the election, or I'm going to reject the lawful votes and I guess just keep doing that until the legislatures agree to put Trump to send electors that don't align with the popular vote, and thus Trump would win. Or calling Rusty Bowers and saying, I want you to do this and this and this to overturn the results in your state, or Brad Raffensperger, all these different efforts to prevent the official, correct constitutional process from moving forward. And it was a pretty vast, dangerous scheme. And here is Jack Smith, last thing we'll look at before looking at Trump's response, announcing this.
As soon as he's done, here he is, the special counsel, Jack Smith.
Good evening. Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with conspiring to defraud the United States, conspiring to disenfranchise voters, and conspiring and attempting to obstruct an official proceeding. The indictment was issued by a grand jury of citizens here in the District of Columbia, and it sets forth the crimes charged in detail. I encourage everyone to read it in full. The attack on our nation's capital on January 6, 2021, was an unprecedented assault on the seat of American democracy. As described in the indictment, it was fueled by lies. Lies by the defendant targeted at obstructing a bedrock function of the U.S. government, the nation's process of collecting, counting, and certifying the results of the presidential election. The men and women of law enforcement who defended the U.S. Capitol on January 6th are heroes. They are patriots and they are the very best of us. They did not just defend.
And then he continues. And interestingly, I've talked about this before multiple times, but what sometimes people within the right wing will try to do is make January 6th, the attack on the Capitol, out to be just a riot. It was just a simple riot like other riots that happened. So why are you talking so much about it? And I always try to bring back the conversation to, while yes, the damage as an individual event mattered, and it being the Capitol mattered and all of that, the larger anti-democratic scheme that was motivated by lies, both that Trump was using to justify his efforts as he's being charged for here to overthrow our democratic process and prevent the federal government from doing what's supposed to do and the correct leader getting into power and all of that, and also justify the attack on the Capitol. That is what is so historic and important to be discussed, along with the individual damage done, the lives impacted, and all of that. Because when you zoom out, you see, oh, January 6th was the culmination, and the rage from Trump's followers based on the lies that were motivating a larger scheme going on to prevent the peaceful transition of power. And that's what this indictment focuses on. It's not even focusing on it being a riot, but instead, like I said, the larger attempt to prevent the lawful process from moving forward. Here is Trump's response on Truth Social. This is nothing more than the latest corrupt chapter in the continued pathetic attempt by the Biden crime family and their weaponized Department of Justice to interfere with the 2024 presidential election, in which President Trump is the undisputed front runner and leading by substantial margins. But why did they wait 2.5 years to bring these fake charges? Why does he say that? 2.5 years? When is someone able, with this type of case, this extensive investigation that's necessary, how right when an event happens are you going to turn around and already be ready to charge someone? Doesn't make any sense. Right in the middle of President Trump's winning campaign for 2024. Why was it announced the day after the big crooked Joe Biden scandal broke out from the halls of Congress? This is a line we'll hear so much in response to Trump's legal troubles. Is this is a distraction from the Hunter Biden stuff. And just yesterday, there was a big bombshell, and that's why Trump's being indicted, which of course makes absolutely no sense, especially when you consider, number one, the evidence that's being brought forward with the Trump stuff and the lack of evidence with the Hunter Biden stuff. But also, every day they're saying there's a big bombshell about Hunter Biden. So whenever you indicted Trump, it was going to be next to some claim of bombshell from Republicans about the Biden crime family. The answer is election interference. And then this is the truly deranged part. The lawlessness of these persecutions of President Trump and his supporters is reminiscent of Nazi Germany in the 1930s, the former Soviet Union, and other authoritarian dictatorial regimes. President Trump has always followed the law and the Constitution with advice from many highly accomplished attorneys. These un-American witch hunts will fail, and President Trump will be reelected to the White House so he can save our country from the abuse, incompetence, and corruption that is running through the veins of our country at levels never seen before. In the last part, 3 years ago, we had strong borders, energy independence, no inflation, and a great economy. Today, we are a nation in decline. President Trump will not be deterred by disgraceful and unprecedented political targeting. And those talking points we've pushed back against many, many times in the future. It's pretty wild that people buy into that. And they won't read the indictment. We'll get to later in today's show. DeSantis admitting he hasn't really actually looked at the indictment. He hasn't actually considered the evidence being claimed here. And still, he's ready to say this is weaponization. And it's the same thing with so many people here. No matter what Trump does, no matter what evidence is being brought against him, the same dishonest talking points will be the refrain. And that is very unfortunate. But what is fortunate is that he is being held accountable, or at least someone's trying to hold Trump accountable. And that's what a country of law and order, as the GOP said they cared about, would be doing. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show hours before all the clips are able to be uploaded to the YouTube channel, plus get the bonus show on the weekends, you can do so by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/membership. That's lukebeasleyshow.com/membership. And there's a link in the description.